The day Willow Thompson walked into Preston Academy's Great Hall with paint under her fingernails. She had no idea she was about to detonate a bomb that had been ticking for 4 years. She just wanted to finish her sketch in peace. I should tell you about Willow first. Before the music started and the floor began to shake with 50 pairs of synchronized feet, she wasn't the kind of girl who made waves. At 17, she'd perfected the art of being invisible, not the desperate kind where you shrink into walls hoping no one notices, but the deliberate kind where you choose exactly how much space you take up in the world. She'd learned that skill the hard way at her old school in Michigan, where being noticed had cost her 18 months of therapy and a father who worked himself to death trying to pay for a lawyer they couldn't afford. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story, the one that ended up on every news channel from here to Seattle, started with something as simple as a Tuesday afternoon and a girl drawing shadows. If you're feeling that rush of what's going to happen next, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to share where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. For those who want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right under this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me bring you more inspiring tales of courage and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being here. Now, let's see what happens when push comes to shove. Willow had claimed a corner table in Preston Academy's Great Hall, the kind of massive space that whispered money in every marble tile and crystal fixture. The May sunlight streamed through windows that cost more than most people's cars, casting patterns she was trying to capture in her sketchbook. Her dark hair fell forward, creating a curtain between her and the world. She liked it that way. Preston Academy wasn't her choice. When her mother remarried Richard, a pharmaceutical executive who collected wines and talked about his boat like it was a family member, they'd moved to Greenwich, Connecticut. Fresh start, her mother had said, smoothing Willow's hair like she was still 7. But Willow knew the truth. Her mother was running from the ghost of her father just as much as Willow was running from what happened at Westfield High. The thing about fresh starts is they only work if everyone else agrees to forget who you were. The first sign something was wrong came when Madison Chen stopped mid-conversation at the table next to her. Then the whispers started, rippling outward like someone had dropped a stone in still water. Willow's pencil paused above the paper. She'd developed a sixth sense for trouble, the kind of hypervigilance that comes from spending a year and a half checking corners and avoiding empty hallways. Then the music exploded from hidden speakers' "Can't Stop the Feeling" by Justin Timberlake, which would have been almost funny if what came next hadn't changed everything. The doors burst open and students poured in like a choreographed flood. They weren't random kids. These were Preston's elite, the ones whose parents' names graced buildings and whose cars in the student lot cost more than teachers' salaries. They moved in perfect synchronization, their bodies telling a story Willow didn't yet understand, but already made her stomach clench. She recognized some of them from her 4 months at Preston. There was Chase Morrison doing a backflip. His father owned 3 hedge funds. Sophia Martinez spinning with her long dark hair flying. Her mother was a federal judge. Nate Harrison leading a group through complicated footwork. His family had donated the new science wing. And then, like the sun, everything else orbited around, came Ethan Caldwell. If Preston Academy was a kingdom, Ethan was its undisputed prince. 6'2" with the kind of casual perfection that came from good genes and better trainers. He moved through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. His smile was weapons-grade charming, the kind that had been getting him out of trouble since he was old enough to talk. At 18, he wore his privilege like other kids wore their Letterman jackets naturally, proudly, without ever questioning if he deserved it. Willow's hand tightened on her pencil. She knew who Ethan Caldwell was. Everyone did. Son of Marcus Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Capital, a hedge fund that managed enough money to buy small countries. The boy who'd been student body president for 3 years running, who'd led the lacrosse team to state championships, who Harvard had been courting since he was a freshman. The golden boy who could do no wrong. Except Willow knew something about golden boys. She'd learned at Westfield High that the shinier the surface, the darker the rot underneath. The flash mob, because that's what this was. She realized with growing dread moved toward her corner of the Great Hall. 50 students dancing in perfect harmony, while the rest of Preston Academy watched. Phones out, recording every moment. The song built to its crescendo as the dancers parted, creating an aisle, and walking down that aisle, carrying what looked like $500 worth of peonies and roses, was Ethan Caldwell, heading straight for her. "No," Willow whispered, but the word was lost in the music. The crowd had formed a circle now, trapping her at her table. Hundreds of faces watched, their phones held high, waiting for whatever scene was about to unfold. Willow's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. She'd been so careful these 4 months, kept her head down, avoided the social landmines, attended classes, and went home. She'd even turned down Jordan Kim's invitation to join the newspaper. Though writing had once been her escape, how had she ended up in Ethan Caldwell's crosshairs? The music cut abruptly, leaving a silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Ethan stood before her table, his blue eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Up close, she could see the calculation behind his perfect smile, the way he positioned himself so the afternoon light hit his face just right. This wasn't spontaneous. This was performance. He dropped to one knee, and the crowd gasped in practiced unison. Someone, probably his best friend. Nate handed him a microphone that had materialized from nowhere. "Willow Thompson," Ethan's voice filled the great hall, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as intoxicating to their audience. "I know we haven't talked much since you arrived at Preston, but sometimes you just know when something's right." Willow's mind went into overdrive. She'd exchanged maybe 10 words with Ethan Caldwell in 4 months. Their only significant interaction had been 2 weeks ago when she'd taken a wrong turn coming back from the bathroom and ended up near the pool house. She'd seen something, left immediately, told no one. Her eyes found Sophia Martinez in the crowd, standing next to her boyfriend, Nate, her perfect face arranged in an expression of delighted surprise. But Willow caught the flicker of something else fear before Sophia's mask slipped back into place. "These past few weeks," Ethan continued, his voice dropping to something more intimate despite the microphone. "Watching you here, seeing how you carry yourself with such quiet grace, I knew I had to take a chance." The lies rolled off his tongue like honey. Willow felt sick. She recognized this for what it was, not romance, but strategy. The question was why. "So, Willow Thompson," Ethan's smile widened, showing perfect teeth that had never known braces because they'd never needed them. "Will you go to senior prom with me?" The great hall held its breath. 500 students waited. 500 phones recorded. Somewhere in the crowd, a teacher watched but didn't intervene because this was Preston Academy. where the Caldwell name meant more than rules. Willow looked at Ethan, kneeling before her with his expensive flowers and his practiced sincerity. She thought about what she'd seen at the pool house, his hands in Sophia's hair, her back against the wall, the way they'd jumped apart when they heard footsteps. She thought about Nate Harrison, who was watching his best friend ask out a nobody with proud, supportive eyes, having no idea his girlfriend spent Tuesday afternoons in that pool house. She thought about her father, dead at 46 from a heart attack the doctors said was brought on by stress. About the lawyer they couldn't afford when Blake Summers decided to make her life hell at Westfield High. About 18 months of therapy to learn how to sleep without nightmares. And she thought about how tired she was of boys like Ethan Caldwell, moving through the world like it owed them everything, including her silence. Why don't you ask the person you really want to go with? The words came out calm, steady, nothing like the earthquake in her chest. You know, the one you meet at the pool house on Tuesday afternoons. If the Great Hall had been silent before, now it was a vacuum. Ethan's perfect mask slipped for just a second, a flash of something ugly underneath, before sliding back into place. But Willow had seen it, and from the way Sophia's face had gone white. She wasn't the only one. I don't know what you mean, Ethan said, but his voice through the microphone had lost its honey coating. Willow stood, gathering her sketchbook and pencils with hands that didn't shake a minor miracle. No, thank you, she said, loud enough for the phones to pick up. I'm not interested. She shouldered her backpack and walked through the crowd that parted in shock. 500 students with 500 phones. And not one of them had expected this. Preston Academy's Golden Prince. Rejected by a nobody transfer student who'd just dropped a bomb nobody fully understood yet. But they would, because Willow had learned something else at Westfield High. In those 18 months of hell, once you light a fuse, there's no putting it out. She made it to the parking lot before her hands started shaking. Made it to her car, a 10-year-old Honda that looked like a servant among the BMWs and Teslas before the first tear fell. Not from fear, though God knew she had reason to be afraid. Ethan Caldwell didn't become king of Preston Academy by being merciful. No, she cried for the girl she'd been at 15, who'd trusted the wrong person and paid for it. For her father, who'd worked himself to death trying to protect her. For her mother, who'd married Richard not for love, but for the safety his money provided. And maybe, just a little, for the girl she was about to become. Because Willow Thompson had just declared war on Ethan Caldwell and at Preston Academy. Wars weren't fought with fists. They were fought with secrets. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't check it, but something made her look. You have no idea what you just did. E. Then another, but you're about to find out. Willow stared at the messages, then at the school building looming behind her like a marble and glass monster. Through the windows, she could see students still milling around, no doubt dissecting every second of what had just happened. The video would be everywhere by tonight. #Preston Prom Drama, or something equally clever. She typed back, "Neither do you," because Ethan Caldwell thought he knew who he was dealing with, some scared transfer student he could intimidate into silence. He had no idea that Willow Thompson had already survived her worst nightmare, had already been broken and put herself back together with edges sharp enough to cut. Her phone rang. Her mother. "Honey, are you okay?" Richard just called and said, "I'm fine, Mom." Someone sent him a video, Something about Ethan Caldwell and Prom Willow. The Caldwells they're important people. Richard does business with Marcus Caldwell. Of course he did. In Greenwich, Connecticut. Everyone did business with everyone. And the threads that connected them were made of money and mutual benefit. I said no to a date. Mom, that's all. That's all? Her mother's voice pitched higher. Willow, honey, you don't understand how things work here. These people, they're not like the people back in Michigan, Willow finished. The ones who made my life hell while you and Dad scrambled to fix it. Trust me, Mom, I know exactly who these people are. Silence on the other end. Then, softer. Just be careful, sweetheart, please. I learned how to be careful the hard way. Remember? After she hung up, Willow sat in her car watching Preston Academy's perfect facade. Somewhere in there, Ethan Caldwell was probably spinning the story, turning her rejection into something else. The crazy new girl, the attention seeker, the nobody who didn't know her place. She'd seen him do it before to others' swift social executions carried out with surgical precision. Like what happened to Emma Walsh when she didn't want to go to homecoming with Chase Morrison. One day, she was part of their circle. The next, she was eating lunch alone, while rumors about her mental health spread like wildfire. She'd transferred out by Christmas. Or David Park, who'd had the audacity to run against Ethan for student body president junior year. Suddenly, everyone knew about his father's bankruptcy, his mother's drinking problem, details that should have been private, but somehow became public knowledge. He'd withdrawn from the race and spent the rest of the year as a ghost. But those kids hadn't known what Willow knew. They hadn't seen what she'd seen. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jordan Kim, the tech genius who'd tried to recruit her for the newspaper. Holy shit! Willow! That was incredible. Also possibly suicidal. You okay? She smiled despite everything. Jordan was one of the few scholarship kids at Preston, brilliant enough that they overlooked his inability to afford the usual trappings of wealth. He survived by being useful fixing phones, recovering data, staying quiet about what he found. Define okay, she typed back. Not currently being destroyed by Ethan Caldwell and his minions. Give it time. It's only been 20 minutes. Look, if you need anything, I mean it. That asshole has had it coming for years. Willow stared at the offer, weighing her options. She'd spent 4 months being invisible, and in 5 minutes, she'd painted a target on her back visible from space. But maybe that's what it took. Maybe the only way to fight someone like Ethan Caldwell was to refuse to play by his rules. Actually, she typed, I might take you up on that. Because if Ethan wanted a war, she'd give him one. But first, she needed to get home, lock her doors, and figure out how a 17-year-old girl with paint under her fingernails fought a prince in his own kingdom. The drive home took 20 minutes through Greenwich's perfect streets, past houses that looked like small hotels and lawns manicured within an inch of their lives. Richard's house, she couldn't call it home. Not really sat on 2 acres behind a gate that required a code. He'd bought it after the wedding, saying Willow and her mother deserved proper security. She'd thought he was being overprotective then. Now she was grateful. The house was empty when she arrived, Richard at work, her mother at one of her charity committees, pretending she'd always belonged among women who wore diamonds to lunch. Willow headed straight to her room, locking the door behind her. Her laptop was open on her desk, her real lifeline to the world. Not the Instagram and TikTok accounts everyone at Preston obsessed over, but the deeper corners of the internet, where she'd learned to disappear after Westfield, where her brother, Charlie, 10 years older and working cybersecurity in Seattle, had taught her things that weren't exactly legal, but had kept her safe. "Never leave digital footprints," he'd said after Blake Summers. "But always make sure you can find everyone else's." She opened an encrypted folder labeled Preston and stared at the files inside. 4 months of careful observation. Photos taken from a distance. Screenshots of posts that disappeared too quickly. Notes about patterns she'd noticed, who went where, when, and with whom, including a series of photos from 2 weeks ago, when she'd accidentally discovered Preston Academy's worst-kept secret, Ethan Caldwell and Sophia Martinez in the pool house. She hadn't meant to find them, had been looking for a quiet place to sketch, somewhere away from the cafeteria's social hierarchies and the library's whispered gossip. The pool house had seemed perfect until she'd heard voices and recognized them. Any decent person would have left immediately. And she had. But not before her phone, always in her hand, out of habit, had captured what it saw. Not intentionally, not at first. But when you've been hunted before, you learn to document everything. Now she had photos that would destroy multiple lives. The Golden Prince and his best friend's girlfriend, tangled together in betrayal. The kind of images that at Preston Academy meant social death. If this reminds you of someone you knew, the kid who held all the cards but never knew when to fold, maybe you understand what happened next. Maybe you know why Willow sat at her desk, staring at those photos, and felt not triumph, but exhaustion. Because she'd been here before, holding proof of someone else's cruelty. And it hadn't saved her then. At Westfield High, she'd had screenshots of Blake's messages, recordings of his threats, documentation of every horrible thing he'd done. But Blake's father had been a judge and his mother had been the principal. And suddenly, Willow's evidence didn't matter. Suddenly, she was the troublemaker, the liar, the girl who needed to be taught a lesson. 18 months of hell. 18 months of walking hallways filled with whispers, of finding her locker vandalized, of rumors that started online and followed her home. Her father had tried everything: lawyers, meetings, pleading with administrators who smiled sadly and did nothing. The stress had eaten him alive. Literally. The heart attack had taken him on a Tuesday, just like today. He'd been meeting with another lawyer, trying one more time to protect his daughter, and now here she was again, with evidence of someone else's sins, facing another golden boy who thought the world was his playground. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing. The video of her rejection had gone viral in the Preston ecosystem. She could see the comments without looking, probably calling her crazy. Stuck up? Jealous? The narrative was already being written, and Ethan Caldwell held the pen. But he'd made one mistake. He'd threatened her. "You have no idea what you just did." Oh, but she did. She'd refused to play the role he'd assigned her, the nobody who should be grateful for his attention, who should keep quiet about what she'd seen, who should know her place in Preston's hierarchy. She'd refused to be another Emma Walsh or David Park, destroyed for the crime of inconveniencing Ethan Caldwell. A car pulled into the driveway. Her mother's Lexus, home early from committee. Willow minimized the folder and pulled up her homework, trying to look normal, trying to look like a girl who hadn't just signed her own social death warrant. But normal was a luxury she'd lost 2 years ago, and there was no going back now. The fuse was lit. The countdown started. All that remained was to see who would be left standing when the explosion came. And in the great hall of Preston Academy, Ethan Caldwell was just beginning to understand that sometimes. The quiet ones were quiet, not because they were weak, but because they were waiting. The first attack came at 3:27 a.m. Willow woke to her phone exploding with notifications, the screen lighting up her dark room like a strobe. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Her stomach dropped before she even looked. The image was sophisticated, too sophisticated for a high school job. Her face, seamlessly edited onto a body that wasn't hers, in a position that made bile rise in her throat. The caption, Preston's newest edition, showing her real talents. She sat up, hands surprisingly steady as she screenshotted everything. Document first, panic later. Charlie had taught her that by the time she got to school. Everyone had seen it. The hallway conversation stopped when she passed. Eyes followed her, some sympathetic but most hungry for drama. This was Preston Academy's favorite blood sport, watching someone fall from grace, even if they'd never had grace to begin with. Slut. The word was whispered just loud enough for her to hear as she passed Ethan's group by the lockers. He stood in the center, looking concerned and disgusted, playing the victim perfectly. "I tried to be nice to her," she heard him saying to a group of juniors. "But some people, they're just not stable. You know the stuff she's posting for attention." He shook his head sadly. Willow kept walking. Let him perform. She had work to do. Jordan Kim intercepted her outside calculus. "That image, it's a deep fake. Good one. But I can prove it's edited. The metadata's all wrong, and there's ghosting around the facial replacement markers. You can prove it. Already did." He held up his phone, showing a detailed technical analysis. "Posted it on the school forum, but..." He shrugged. "Ethan's people are drowning it out. They're organized." Of course they were. Ethan had been building his kingdom for 4 years. He had lieutenants, foot soldiers, an entire infrastructure designed to maintain his power. Willow had her pain and her patience. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "That thing you do, recovering data from phones." Jordan's eyes sharpened. "What kind of data?" "The kind someone like Ethan might think is permanently deleted." A slow smile spread across Jordan's face. "Now, you're thinking like a survivor. Meet me in the computer lab after school. Bring his phone if you can get it." "I can't get his phone." "Then bring someone who can." The day was a master class in psychological warfare. Her locker had been filled with printed copies of the fake image. Someone had written "liar" across her calculus textbook in permanent marker. During lunch, a freshman, accidentally, spilled chocolate milk down her back. But Willow had survived worse. She changed into her gym clothes and kept moving. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sophia Martinez cornered her in the bathroom after 6th period. Her perfect face streaked with tears. "I know what you saw," Sophia whispered, checking the stalls to make sure they were alone. "At the pool house." Willow said nothing, waiting. "He has things on his phone, not just of me." Sophia's voice broke. "I tried to break it off, but he said he'd show Nate, show everyone. He has this folder where he keeps trophies." The word hit Willow like ice water. Trophies, pictures, videos, of girls he's been with, some from parties where they didn't even know. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself. "I think some of them were freshmen when he took them, maybe younger." Willow's mind raced. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was criminal. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the first person who's ever stood up to him publicly and survived the day." Sophia laughed bitterly. "Also because I'm selfish. I want out, but I can't do it alone. He'll destroy me. He's trying to destroy me anyway." But you're still standing. Sophia pulled out her phone. I have his passcode. He made me watch while he put in my birthday, said it was romantic. Narcissistic asshole never changed it. They made a plan. It was dangerous, probably stupid. But Willow was past caring about safe choices. Safe choices were for people who hadn't already lost everything once. That night, while Ethan was at lacrosse practice, Sophia managed to swap phones with him during their study session, same model, same case. He didn't notice for the 40 minutes it took Jordan to work his magic. What they found was worse than Willow had imagined. 12 folders, 12 girls. Some were labeled with initials, others with degrading descriptions. The photos ranged from compromising to explicit. 3 of the girls looked young, too young. One was wearing a Preston Academy freshman orientation shirt. Jesus Christ, Jordan breathed. His usual sarcasm gone. This is evidence of multiple felonies. But there was more. Screenshots of conversations where Ethan bragged to his inner circle. Plans to drug drinks at parties. Discussions of which girls were easy targets, scholarship students who couldn't afford to fight back. Quiet ones who wouldn't tell. And in a folder labeled insurance. They found photos of other Preston students in compromising positions. Not just girls, everyone. Teachers at bars. Parents in affairs. The principal's son at what looked like a drug deal. He's been collecting leverage for years, Sophia whispered. That's how he stays untouchable. Willow stared at the screen, understanding flooding through her. This wasn't just about power. It was about the system that created and protected predators like Ethan Caldwell. The same system that had protected Blake Summers while her father fought himself to death trying to get justice. We can't just leak this, Jordan said. His father's lawyers will bury it. Claim it's fabricated like they're doing with your deepfake. Then we don't leak it, Willow said quietly. We make it impossible to bury. Prom was in 3 days. 3 days of escalating attacks, her car tires slashed. Her mother's charity committee suddenly finding concerns about her membership. Richard's business partners making worried calls about his stepdaughter's reputation. But Willow endured. She'd learned at Westfield that the worst part wasn't the attacks themselves, it was the isolation. The feeling that you were fighting alone. This time was different. This time, she had allies. Sophia, terrified but determined. Jordan, whose own sister had transferred out of Preston after a run-in with Chase Morrison. Even quiet kids she'd never spoken to started nodding at her in the halls. Tiny gestures of solidarity from others who'd been crushed under Preston's golden heel. The night of prom. Willow stood in front of her mirror in a $40 dress from Goodwill. Red. Because she'd be damned if she'd hide, her mother hovered in the doorway, worry etched in every line of her face. You don't have to go, her mother said for the 10th time. We could leave. Richard has a house in Florida. I ran once, Willow interrupted. Dad died thinking he'd failed to protect me. I won't run again. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. He'd be proud of you, terrified, but proud. I know. The plan was simple. Jordan had set up a live stream that would broadcast simultaneously to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, using a network of accounts he'd created to ensure it couldn't all be shut down at once. Willow would get Ethan to confess on camera, and if that failed, she'd present the evidence they'd found. What they hadn't counted on was Ethan being 3 steps ahead. Willow walked into the Preston Academy gymnasium, transformed into a glittering wonderland that probably cost more than most people's weddings. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the floor. A live band played softly on a stage draped in gold fabric. It was beautiful in the way that very expensive things often were impressive but cold. She felt the shift in energy as soon as she entered. The dancing slowed. Conversations paused. Ethan stood near the punch bowl spiked, undoubtedly surrounded by his court. He was resplendent in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. Sophia on his arm in a dress that matched his bow tie. The perfect couple. Except for the fear in Sophia's eyes when she saw Willow. "Well, well," Ethan's voice carried across the suddenly quiet gymnasium. "The liar shows up. That takes guts." Willow walked forward, phone already recording in her clutch. 3,000 viewers, and climbing Jordan had done his job with promotion. "Or stupidity," Chase Morrison added, earning laughs from the crowd forming around them. "I'm not the liar here," Willow said calmly. She'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind. "Am I, Ethan?" His smile was sharp as glass. "You know, I felt sorry for you at first. New girl, tragic backstory. Clearly some mental health issues from your last school." He stepped closer, and the crowd moved with him like a tide. "But then you started making up stories, sending out those pictures of yourself for attention. You mean the deepfake your tech guy created?" Willow held up her phone, showing the technical analysis Jordan had prepared. "The one with your digital fingerprints all over the metadata." A flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, quickly covered. "Anyone can fake that kind of... like you faked Emma Walsh's mental health records or David Park's family problems." She was pushing now, trying to make him angry enough to slip. "Or is that different from your other hobbies? You're delusional." But his voice had lost some of its smoothness. "Am I... should we ask Sophia?" That did it. Ethan's mask cracked. And for a moment, the real him showed through ugly and small and vicious. He grabbed Willow's wrist, hard enough to hurt. "You think you're smart. You have no idea who you're messing with. My father owns half this state. I could destroy your whole family with one phone call." "Like you destroyed those 12 girls." The gymnasium went silent. Even the band had stopped playing. Ethan's grip tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Folder names," Willow said clearly, making sure the live stream picked up every word. "KM freshman year, ST after homecoming. 3 girls from the volleyball team at Chase's party last summer when you put something in the punch." His face had gone white. Around them, whispers started. Phones came out not to record Ethan humiliating her, but to search for their own names, their own fears. "You're lying," but his voice cracked. "Your words, Ethan." From the group chat with Chase and Nate. She pulled up the screenshots on her phone, holding it high so the cameras could see. "Should I read what you said about the freshman, how she was easy because her scholarship made her desperate to fit in?" "Stop!" Sophia's voice cut through the noise. She stepped away from Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "Just stop!" She turned to Nate, who was staring at his girlfriend and best friend with dawning horror. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He said he'd release the pictures if I didn't." "You bitch!" Ethan lunged for Sophia, but Nate was faster. The punch connected with Ethan's jaw with a crack that echoed through the gymnasium. And then everything exploded. Jordan's voice in her earpiece, 20,000 viewers and climbing. News outlets picking it up. Keep going. Willow stepped back as Ethan fell to the polished floor, blood streaming from his nose. But she kept her phone steady, kept recording as he scrambled to his feet. His perfect image finally shattered. "You're all going to pay for this," he snarled, looking around at the crowd that had always followed him, now backing away. "Every single one of you. Do you know who I am? Do you know what my father—" "Your father's about to know what you are," Willow said quietly. "A predator who's been hunting girls at this school for 4 years. And everyone's going to know, because 40,000 people are watching right now." She turned the phone to show him the viewer count. The comments flooding in, the shares multiplying exponentially. His reign hadn't ended with a whimper or a bang, but with the quiet click of a share button pressed thousands of times. That's when he broke completely. "You don't understand." Ethan's voice cracked, tears streaming down his face. "You don't know what it's like. My father. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be controlled. He taught me." He stopped, seeming to realize what he was saying. "He taught you what?" Willow asked softly. "To take what I want. That people like us, we're different. We're above." He looked around at the horrified faces of his classmates, his kingdom crumbling in real time. Oh God, I'm just like him." He fell to his knees, sobbing not the calculated tears of a manipulator, but the broken cries of someone finally seeing himself clearly. "I became him. I became everything I hated about him." In that moment, Willow felt something she hadn't expected: pity. Not forgiveness, never that, but the recognition of another child broken by the systems that were supposed to protect them. But pity didn't mean mercy. Not for the 12 girls in those folders. Not for everyone he'd hurt. "The FBI will want to talk to you," she said, loud enough for the live stream. "About the photos, about the underage girls, about all of it." The rest was almost anticlimactic. School security arrived. Then the police. Parents rushed in, some angry, some horrified, all trying to spin or contain what couldn't be contained. The internet had the story now, and the internet never forgot. Principal Barrett tried to shut down the live stream, but Jordan had anticipated that. Mirrors popped up faster than they could be removed. # Preston Predator started trending. News vans appeared in the parking lot. By midnight, Marcus Caldwell had released a statement through his lawyers, distancing himself from his son's actions. By morning, Preston Academy announced a full investigation. By Monday, 40% of the student body had withdrawn. The FBI did come, and they found more than even Willow had discovered. A network of entitled boys across multiple elite schools, sharing photos and strategies like baseball cards. Ethan wasn't the only predator, just the one who'd been caught. Harvard rescinded his admission. His father's business partners fled. The Caldwell name, once synonymous with power in Greenwich, became toxic overnight. And Willow. She finished her senior year at Preston, one of only 200 students who stayed. She ate lunch with Jordan and Sophia and the other survivors who'd found their voices in the wreckage. She wrote an essay about that night for her Columbia application, about systems of power and the cost of silence. They gave her a full scholarship. On her last day at Preston Academy, she stood in the great hall where it had all started. The crystal chandeliers still cast their rainbows, but the marble felt less cold somehow. Or maybe she'd just grown immune to the chill of expensive things. Her phone buzzed. Charlie, from Seattle. "Saw the news about the trial starting. You okay?" "Yeah," she typed back. "I'm good." And for the first time in years, she meant it, because Willow Thompson had learned something in that gymnasium, surrounded by the glittering wreckage of Ethan Caldwell's empire. Sometimes the only way to fight a monster was to refuse to become one yourself, to stand in your truth. Even when they tried to bury you in their lies, her father would have been proud. But power, Willow had learned, was just another word for fear. And she wasn't afraid anymore. 6 months later, Willow sat in her dorm room at Columbia, watching the news coverage of Ethan Caldwell's sentencing. 12 years in federal prison. The reporter called it the fall of American prep school royalty. But Willow knew better. It was the inevitable end of unchecked privilege. Her phone lit up with messages. Sophia, thriving at Yale after testifying. Jordan, who'd turned down MIT to build a nonprofit helping cyberbullying victims. Even Nate, who'd written to thank her for exposing the truth, however painful. But the message that mattered most came from an unknown number. My daughter was KM in those folders, freshman year. She tried to tell us something happened at a party, but we didn't. We didn't listen. Thought she was being dramatic. She's getting help now, thanks to you. Thank you for being brave when we failed her. Willow stared at the message, feeling the weight of all those girls who'd suffered in silence. The system that protected predators didn't just rely on money and power, it relied on disbelief. On the assumption that nice boys from good families couldn't possibly be monsters. She thought about her father, who'd believed her when no one else would, who'd fought until his heart gave out, trying to protect her from a world that valued reputation over truth. I did it, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. Outside her window, New York sprawled endless and anonymous, a place where she could be anyone. But Willow Thompson had learned she didn't need to be anyone else. She'd faced down a kingdom built on secrets and watched it crumble with the simple act of refusing to kneel. Sometimes, the quiet ones weren't quiet because they were weak. Sometimes, they were just choosing their moment to roar.